What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and we're getting into the final pick of Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji's 2025 draft class in Tyler Barron Edge out of Miami. And he really feels like a Michael Clemons 1.5 or 2.0, right? Essentially Aaron Glenn's version of Michael Clemons, and not necessarily because they do all of the same things, but there's some similarities in them coming in as older prospects, them coming in as having a little bit more polish than I think you would necessarily expect from a day 3 type guy. And I would say even from the standpoint of kind of their demeanor, right? Tyler Barron seems kind of like a more laid back type guy, probably turns it on during game time, different things of that nature. But let's go ahead and dive into the profile here. 6'5", 258 pounds. He's built really, really well to hold up out there on the edge. 24 years old at some point during his rookie season. So this is what I mean. From an athletic standpoint, he's going to be closer to being maxed out than you being able to pick up somebody like Mimbu, who's turning 21, maybe 22 in his rookie year, right? So it's not to write him off or anything, but just something we have to keep in mind. Much like Michael Clemons, without him making a early and or consistent impact, it's going to be hard to imagine that he can last the entirety of his rookie contract and potentially even get a extension at some point, right? He's going to have to make it be felt. And I think by default, a lot of these guys that have position alignment or versatility, you probably throw them into that JFM bucket, and they'll need to have some dual impact, right? Now, he coming out of high school, he is a 4-star recruit, ended up racking up 29 starts over the course of his 5-year career. And he does have some bloodlines going on, right? His brother played on the defensive line for Virginia Tech, and he's currently playing in the Canadian Football League. And his father, I couldn't find out what team or anything, but I believe his father was a former NFL player, Patrick Lenore, and he also was Tennessee's director of player development. So he got a chance to work with his son and kind of oversee what it looked like with his development personally. And then when he moved to Miami, he got a chance to have a connection with Mason Taylor, where Jason Taylor, his father, ended up being the coach for the defensive line unit at Miami. So he's coming from good stock, and he's coming from pretty decent coaching staffs and or individual position coaches, which you love to see, and kind of speaks to some of that polish in his game. And then he also got himself an East-West Shrine Bowl invite. So while he never really, I would say, dominated or really necessarily took over, he's had stretches of really, really strong play. So starting his career off at Tennessee for the first 4 years, he was slowly able to work his way up into the starting ranks. And then by year 3, you were seeing him, reach kind of the upper echelon of that defensive line unit, where he's racking up, 6.5 to 8 sacks. He's getting up there with tackles for losses. He's making a consistent impact and making it known why he needs to be used often and consistently. And he did have a fair amount of games where he was playing 75% of the time or more. So this was a guy that was able to earn the trust of 2 different coaching staffs and get utilized pretty heavily when necessary. When I look at things like him going into his senior year, him going into his 5th year, tied for the team lead in tackles for loss and sacks. This is with Miami, right? Very easy to not see somebody necessarily break out when they bet on themselves, especially after he had a really, really good year with James Pierce in 2023. And a lot of the Volunteers fans thought that he was going to make a break for the NFL at that point. But I did see some comments from Barron that was mentioning he wanted to continue to hone his craft, but he wanted to switch up with a new coaching staff and see what else was it there for him to learn, pick up, and try to add into his repertoire. He did have some pretty interesting numbers as well. A 17% pressure rate between 2023 and 2024, which is pretty solid. A 16% career missed tackle rate. And we'll talk about why when we get into some of his opportunities, but a pretty clear gap in his game that we're going to need for him to clean up, right? Even for the people that hate the Michael Clemons or some of these other guys at the bottom end of the roster or the defensive line depth chart anyways, for the most part, the defensive line tackled relatively well, and you didn't have clear deficiencies in that area, I guess is just the best way to put it. If anything, it was guys being blown off the ball or not just being able to get there and make the play that was necessary. But something to be in tune with here as we kind of watch what his rookie year develops into. And then he did have an insane 23 pressures over a 4-game stretch at one point for Miami. You talk about him also having 4.5 sacks, I believe it was, over like his first 4 games. This was a guy that definitely jumped on his opportunity and ran with it. So anything's with Miami, not a significant injury history of any kind I could really find. There was some ankle, some head stuff that I've seen mentioned here and there, but it was stuff that knocked him out for maybe a couple of quarters at most, and then he was able to come back into the game. So nothing significant to write off, which is also a huge boost, especially for a guy that's going to, again, be considered a little bit older. And when you look at what he does really, really well, he's, for one, is capable of being played in odd and even front alignment. So when you talk about position versatility, not just trying to switch him inside or anything of that nature, you do have the ability to have him on the field at all times if you just want to make sure that you have somebody out there that has some kind of matchup advantage. The eye discipline, I think, is pretty solid for him when it comes to flowing where the play is going to develop and not really being tricked or fooled by play action and or different things that the offense will want to pull up when it comes to misdirections and stuff of that sort. Tennessee used him on the interior in some of their sub packages as well. Not really so much with Miami, but again, in terms of that JFM style player, it does present itself an opportunity for the Jets, and you can pretty clearly see what advantages or disadvantages you get between him and someone like Michael Clemons that's going to fight at the bottom of the roster. Keep in mind, Clemons being about 20-ish to 30-ish pounds heavier, so he should be able to hold up a lot better in both roles, but you never know. Some guys just have a knack and a feel for certain things, and I think with Barron specifically, there's issues around like his pad level and always having that leverage that you'd expect from him, but he does seem like he does his best when he's in a 3-point stance, which I think he favors that hand in the dirt, although he can stand up and rush and do things like that as well. And that tends to help him out when it comes to some of those leverage concerns a little bit more. I think he's capable of setting the edge. Doesn't really have an overwhelming strength. I think you look at him, and if you want to project him and what he could be in an ideal world, he becomes a pass rush specialist that doesn't hurt you in the ground game significantly, as opposed to Michael Clemons. He was always a guy that's should have been anyways, above average to elite in the run game, and then hopefully you were able to work out some of those kinks with him being a pass rush specialist. So I think those are two of the clearest distinctions between both of these guys, but Tyler Barron has the ability to potentially do both at a high enough level. He's really capped by his athleticism, if anything, which is intriguing because for his combine, he actually did really, really well. Had a borderline elite 40-yard dash, had pretty solid explosive numbers, and he brings a decent wingspan and stuff like that. But I don't think you see the same level of athleticism pop up on the field, so maybe it's a comfort thing, maybe it's a scheme thing, but this is one of the things I love to watch the combine for, right? I think this is an issue where, at the very least, it's a mental piece, right? For any number of reasons that I said or haven't said so far, there's more that you can unlock with some of these guys, and that's the positive here. Now, he has some pass rush moves that I think are part of his go-to bag, right? He has a pretty solid cross chop. You see him utilize some hand swipe maneuvers, and I think most of the time he does a decent job of being able to bend the corner as well. And so he does this is where you see a little bit more of that polish in terms of him being a pass rusher. He may not always have a plan, or he may not always be able to win with one of his go-to moves, and or may not always have a solid counter to him being beat on his initial move. But when he is winning, he finds a way to take the most efficient path to get to the quarterback and not necessarily have to dance or mosey around with things, which is always appreciated. Now, opportunity-wise, again, when it comes to the athleticism, you aren't going to see him overpower many people. I think the same way we view Clemons when we're considering him an elite edge guy in run defense, it's the same way you could look at Tyler Barron, because when he's matched up against a tight end, it's very few of them that can really do anything with him. So we'll see if that keeps up in the NFL. But other than that, going up against the offensive line, he's not going to be overpowering a ton of those tackles and or guards if he's going from the interior. He's not overly fast either, which means you know, in the same vein that you pick a Jermaine Johnson in the first round because he has the athleticism and or depending on how you felt about the film and the pass rush ability, he was a guy at the very least that when he won, he can go out there and get you a Lamar Jackson on the ground, get you a Josh Allen on the ground. That's not going to happen with Tyler Barron here, but hopefully he can still flush the pocket and at least make some plays for other guys out there on the field. He's going to need to improve his contact balance. I think too far often you see him end up hitting the floor, and again, it tends to commonly come when there's an offensive lineman that gets matched up against him, and not even in just a one-on-one situation, right? You'll have some of those situations where a pulling guard or tackle is coming from the backside, and he just kind of gets washed in motion, but for the most part, he's going to be an easy enough guy to move unless you can find a way to kind of give him some space in motion and allow him to build up some of that speed to try to convert the power, and then he has a solid enough chance of kind of holding his own or making something else happen. And I think he can also be baited into some false openings where you know, kind of that one-track mind, tunnel vision, if you will. He might over-pursue some things, specifically when he's working through space, and tends to end up kind of running himself completely out of a play, or again, he's end up getting washed by a guard or tackle that he's not necessarily seen coming. But he has some interesting comps that are kind of all over the place, right? Michael Clemons, I wouldn't say is a true comp. That's just more of the comparison because it's an easy battle that you can see happening over the course of the offseason for which one of those guys makes the roster. But Dwayne Smoot, I think, is near the top of what you can expect from someone like him. And then guys like Aaron Lynch and Isaiah Thomas probably round out that average to maybe below average expectation, depending on how his career pans out. But he's a pretty fun watch. Overall, it is interesting that we decided to invest heavily enough in a couple Miami players. So we'll see how that ends up working out as well. But let me know what you guys think about Tyler Barron. I think probably walking into the season, maybe edge 4. I don't even know who I will put above him just yet. But you have to imagine there's going to be some kind of internal promotions that go on, whether that is Michael Clemons just getting kind of the subtle nod ahead of him and it's his job to lose, or other guys that end up stepping up like an Xavier Watts or a Brady McGregor or something like that. But let me know what you guys think again. I'll catch you guys. Peace.